The government says these were the most violent protests in Paris in over 50 years. On Saturday, 133 people were injured and more than 400 were arrested. The movement began 3 weeks ago on social media, with calls to protest attacks on fuel. But it's grown into a working-class revolt against the economic policies of President Emmanuel Macron. 27-year-old Jimmy Moreno came in from a nearby suburb. He works for the railways and voted for Macron.
C'est le peuple, tout bêtement, sans opinion politique. Nous sommes dans la rue tous par solidarité. La politique, notre politique, elle est corrompue.
The yellow vests that Jimmy and others are wearing have become a symbol. A law requires drivers to carry them, so they're easier to spot. Now, it's making their movements harder to ignore.
On retrouve une part d'humanité envers tout le monde. Tout le monde redevient humain. On est là pour une seule cause. Tout le monde met ses différends de côté.
Le peuple français.
Exactement. Nous sommes le peuple français, rien d'autre.
What's going on now? What are they chanting?
La démission de Macron, c'est ce qu'on souhaite. En premier, démission de Macron et changement de République pour être dans une vraie démocratie.
Démission Macron, démission.
The tax
Good evening, everyone. We are live from the bunker tonight, broadcasting live on Let the People Decide. My name is Andrew Lopez. I'm the current Canadian County Chairman of the Republican Party here in beautiful Canadian County, Oklahoma. If you had just watched, we showed a clip from Vice News explaining some background on the Yellow Vest movement that's happening in France right now. To give you a background on where these Yellow Vests are coming from, the French government actually requires French citizens to have these yellow vests in their cars. And so they're using this as a protest to further state how ridiculous and absurd these new carbon fuel taxes that the French government is trying to perpetrate on the citizens is. This yellow vest that they are required to have in their cars, if you do not have a yellow vest in your car, you are subject to a fine of 135 euros, which is equivalent to $153. They've made a crime something that should not be a crime. They're imposing an unjust requirement on their citizens, and then they point to this carbon fuel tax. And so you guys understand what this is. The French government is taxing their people at such a rate, or they were attempting that. You know, Macron is relenting on that after these protests have begun to occur. This carbon fuel tax would have taxed the French citizens to the point that they would not have been able to operate their vehicles because fuel would be so expensive. And so the government was attempting to control behavior and harm their citizens for something that they thought they knew better for their citizens, what situation their citizens should be in. Furthermore, this Yellow Vest movement is a protest against globalism, against the EU's open border policies that are harming France. The French citizens are calling for Macron to resign. The French want their borders to be respected. They want their sovereignty to be respected. They are tired of these terrorist incidents happening in their country where they are run over by vehicles, by trucks. They are tired of the bombs that have been happening. You know what you've been hearing and seeing in the news in France. This is what happens when a government does not respect borders, does not respect sovereignty, does not respect the safety of their citizens. When it does not have their rights primary in mind when passing laws and making policy. And this carbon fuel tax is a taste for the French. It's a bad taste in their mouth for how much disdain the French government has for them. So they took something that represented the absurdity of government, the absurdity that the government forced them to have in their cars, and they took to the streets to protest this absurd government. And so today, we are wearing this, and we've put this yellow vest on our OTU Sign the Petition t-shirt to show the French people that we stand with them in their calls for their government to respect their sovereignty and their borders and their livelihood. We do not endorse and we do not promote violence in the protests of improper government. And we want the people to recognize that there is a group called the Black Bloc that is likely attempting to undermine the Yellow Vest movement and is similar to Antifa. And so, again, we do not endorse violence in protesting government, but we do stand in solidarity with the French people, that their rights, their sovereignty, and their lives should be respected. And we encourage peaceful protests and changing of the government in order to accomplish that. We draw a connection between the French people's protests through the Yellow Vest movement and our own problems that we've been having here in the state of Oklahoma with a government that does not respect our rights, our government that does not properly represent us and actually denies us proper representation by actions that we've seen over this past year and even recently by comments made by certain legislators. And so tonight we're going to be drawing those connections, making it clear, and reiterating why Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite started as a movement here in the state of Oklahoma. So right now we're going to have a word from our sponsors and take a momentary break.
Hey everybody, Todd Tucker here, and everyone who knows me knows I love to read a great book, and right now I'm reading this incredible novel by local author Richard Engel. All you have to do is go to LastAmericanPresident.com and say big right now in this book. The Last American President is a story about political intrigue, romance, betrayal set against the backdrop of the dissolution of the United States of America. It's great reading, and when you go to LastAmericanPresident.com, LastAmericanPresident.com, use the promo code OTU, you're going to save money. And not only that, but half the price comes back to OTU. So half the proceeds from this book come back so you can watch great programming like you see on the OTU Media Network every day. LastAmericanPresident.com. I highly recommend this book. Read it today.
Introducing all new, safe, natural relief. A cannabinoid-rich, clarity and focus formula with 17 essential supplements. When it matters most, you've got a job to do. Anxiety isn't an option. Programmed to keep you moving. A product exclusively manufactured for Active Duty RX by Cantech Labs.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for staying with us. Please go out and check out Last American President online. It's a great book. If you were listening before the break, we are discussing the Yellow Vest movement in France and how it's related to our own issues here in the state of Oklahoma regarding government that does not respect citizens' rights. If you all recall, over this past year we had the instance of House Bill 1010XX. This bill instigated the largest tax increase in the state of Oklahoma, and it was passed in a matter of 3 hours. It was not given enough time that would allow for citizens to voice their opinion to their duly elected representatives so that we could properly be represented. When action is taken on your behalf that you are not aware of, that's not proper representation. If you had a lawyer that did certain things on your behalf that you were not made aware of before that action was taken, you would fire that lawyer. That's not proper representation. What we had in the case of House Bill 1010XX, the largest tax increase in the state of Oklahoma at $500 million, we had legislators that were dead set on pushing their agenda instead of the agenda of defending your rights and your personal sovereignty. If you do not recall what was contained in that bill, and this may sound similar to what we're seeing in France, we have these tax increases that occurred under it. This tax increase under House Bill 1010XX added 3 cents per gallon tax on gasoline, added 6 cents per gallon tax on diesel, added $1 per pack tax on cigarettes, and adds 3% to the gross production tax. And if you recall what I said, the French government was attempting to control behavior through taxing French citizens out of their ability to purchase fuel. While most Oklahomans may be able to absorb this cost of the tax increase, it doesn't make the absurdity of these taxes any less potent. We were attempting to raise taxes in order to get more money for the teachers to have their salaries. But when you increase tax on fuel, it increases tax on normal citizens, it increases taxes on businesses, it increases taxes on schools, and when you combine all those effects, you can basically call that nullification on a salary increase. So it's a bait and switch. Not only that, there's a bait and switch in the fact that these tax increases that were supposed to be dedicated to the teachers' salaries and classroom funding, after 1 year, they can be used for anything that the legislature wishes. So that's another bait and switch of deception that the legislature played on us. Not only did they deny us our representation through shoving this bill through in 3 hours to where the normal public did not have time to contact their legislators to voice their opinion on it, but they came back around and they made it to where those funds aren't dedicated to the purpose that they said it was dedicated for. And so that's why we're hearing the drum beat again coming into this session that they need to put more funding into education. Why is that? Because the funding was not dedicated in the first place. It gives us further reason not to trust the people that we have in leadership. And so we go on to the larger issue it wrapped up around this bill. If you remember Senator Greg Treat, who's a Senate Pro Tem, he said at the time that we have to raise taxes in order to relieve the pressure. Here's the problem. The Treasurer Ken Miller was reporting that we had record tax collections over the past year. And if any of you have read the letter that Canadian County is sending to the legislature, that's to the tune of $1.2 billion over last year's collections. This is without the tax increases of 1010XX. So we have a legislature, a government that's pushing an agenda that's against wisdom and against statistics, saying that we need more taxes when we had 3 times the needed amount to pay for the teacher salary increases. So we have to question what's going on here. We had OEA, teachers lobbying government lobbying government to be paid more through our tax dollars, taking more of our property, more of our hard-earned money, making it more difficult for some families to make ends meet every month. And then on the other side of that, when we brought up our petition, and we'll be going over that here in a second, when we brought up our petition, it was struck down by the Supreme Court here in Oklahoma for trivial reasons like it was missing page numbers. They claimed that we were attempting to deceive the public because we left the hotel tax off of there when it had been repealed by the legislature and wasn't a part of 1010XX anymore. We were being truthful to the public. It's the Supreme Court that was denying our right to petition our government. Here in Oklahoma, there's something wrong with our government. There has been a corruption of purpose in our government. And whether it be for personal gain or for neglect reasons, we'll find that out. But here at Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, as chairman in Canadian County for the Republican Party, we are standing up and calling attention, calling the public and calling our legislature and calling our government to attention that it has become corrupt in purpose. And we are pointing out the instances where we see it. And we connect that to the French because they see points of corruption in their government as well, and they're pointing it out through wearing their yellow vest. Not only is it absurd for the government to tell you to keep a yellow vest in your car, or you're fined $150. But it's absurd that a government would have so much control, or that you would cede so much control to a government that they would be able to tax you out of using your own property, your car, to get to work, which keeps you from working, which causes you to lose your stability in order to take care of yourself. We cannot let government be this. From our own Oklahoma Republican Party platform, our statement of beliefs, it says that our rights of life, liberty, and property are natural rights granted to us by God, protected by the Constitution, to be defended by our elected officials. We are not seeing that in France, and we are not seeing that in the state of Oklahoma. Business as usual can't continue when you have a government that willfully oppresses and violates its citizens' rights. With that said, we're going to take a break and hear some more from our sponsors.
Introducing all new, safe, natural relief. A cannabinoid-rich, clarity and focus formula with 17 essential supplements. When it matters most, you've got a job to do. Anxiety isn't an option. Programmed to keep you moving. A product exclusively manufactured for Active Duty RX by Cantech Labs.
Is your kitchen looking sad these days? Are you tired of looking at that old, dated bathroom? From rooftops to those unsightly holes in the walls, Complete Contracting has got you covered. Call 405-676-0595 today to schedule an estimate. Once again, that number is 405-676-0595. And remember, Complete Contracting has the contracting expertise for all your renovation and repair needs.
Hey everybody, Todd Tucker here, and everyone who knows me knows I love to read a great book, and right now I'm reading this incredible novel by local author Richard Engel. All you have to do is go to LastAmericanPresident.com and say big right now in this book. The Last American President is a story about political intrigue, romance, betrayal set against the backdrop of the dissolution of the United States of America. It's great reading, and when you go to LastAmericanPresident.com, use the promo code OTU, you're going to save money. And not only that, but half the price comes back to OTU. So half the proceeds from this book come back so you can watch great programming like you see on the OTU Media Network every day. LastAmericanPresident.com. I highly recommend this book. Read it today.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with us and joining us if you're just tuning in. This is OTU Media, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. I am Andrew Lopez, the chairman of the Canadian County Republican Party. Are you guys with us on Facebook? Do you know that we have a YouTube channel? We even have a blog spot. We invite you to join us there. Go on to Facebook and search for Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. You can click on the page name for this video that you're watching right now and get back to our Facebook page. You can go onto YouTube and go to Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite or OTU Media and find us there. Please subscribe and enable notifications so that you're notified whenever we come up with a new video. We have that Bunker blog spot. Please check that out. We also have an important Patreon page. If you visit patreon.com/OTU Media, all one word at the end, patreon.com/OTU Media, you can join us and become a supporter, a soldier, a sergeant, a co-producer, and even a sponsor. There's special benefits that go along with each level. Please visit patreon.com/OTU Media to find out what those benefits are. We'd love to get connected with you, and we'd love to have you in this fight that we have against the corporate filtered media here in Oklahoma. So getting back to what we were discussing tonight, what we have been discussing, the Yellow Vest movement in France, and how the sentiments of the people there in France relate to what's going on here in Oklahoma as well. We have been discussing the House Bill 1010XX, which was processed through the legislature in a matter of 3 hours, which did not allow for proper representation of the citizens of Oklahoma by their legislature. And we have thought that while our government is wanting more of our taxes, they continue to reduce our rights. We've seen this in how Mary Fallon vetoed the constitutional right to carry bill from Senator Nathan Dahm. She even promised that she was going to do it. It flew through the legislature. Now, we suspect that there is a plan between the legislature and Governor Fallon that they knew she was going to veto it, but they get the kudos for voting it through. And we don't appreciate that kind of deception. So we look at that example, and we see a government that continues to come to us and say, we must raise your taxes, we must take more of your property, we must, take away the advantages of your hard work. And they continually say, oh, we don't believe that it's safe enough to allow you to defend yourself or to have this right or that right. We go to the example of the property tax, how education and roads is funded most in the state. The government looks at us and says, we know better than you on what to do with the education of your children. And so because we know better than you, we're going to depossess you of your property and your property rights. And if you do not agree with this stance, if you do not feel like paying that property tax because you don't agree with what the government's doing and forcing you to pay for somebody else's child's education, the government will come and confiscate that property from you. In a funny way of thinking about it, we have here in Oklahoma, we have to have a permit to carry a firearm. If you were watching the News Now OKC coverage before this video, you would have seen that we have someone going into Kansas where they have constitutional carry and they recognize citizens' rights to defend themselves, but Oklahoma doesn't. We require a permit, and so in this case we have
just for our own purposes
a situation where registration may lead to confiscation, and in this case, by registering with the government, you have your right to defend yourself through the Second Amendment has been confiscated. They're requiring you to pay them for the privilege of defending yourself and having the firearm on your person to defend yourself. And so whenever there is a monetary transaction to get something back that God gave you and is rightfully yours, the government's made something a privilege that should be a right.
No,
and we shouldn't allow the government to do this to us. We shouldn't allow the government to situate itself in such a way.
Carry any firearms in a police lobby. Do you guys allow that here in this state?
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue as far as I know carrying it in our lobby. I didn't see any signs that we had posted. So.
Okay, good. Y'all have never had any issue with it, because the state where I come from just thinks that if you were to allow that, the world would end. That they would be having shootouts in the police lobby.
We have an open carry, so through our state. What state are you from?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah. Yep. I don't know any of the laws there, but.
Yeah, it's funny, you have to have a license in Oklahoma to carry, but somebody from Kansas can come down there without a license and carry.
Oh, really? I didn't know
that. Yeah, they
either.
Respect that.
So they grandfathered in basically for the Kansas open carry law?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, but we can't open carry, we can't constitutional carry down there. So if somebody from Kansas goes down there, they can carry without a license, but we can't. So I was just calling and get an interview with you guys real quick about, have you had any problems with permitless gun carry?
I haven't run into it.
Yeah, you haven't either, huh? Okay.
None whatsoever.
Good. So we'll go back. I've got a news channel down there, News Now OKC, and we'll put y'all on there saying that, because They think that if you, we almost had permitless carry last year, or this year actually, earlier in the year, and the governor vetoed it because she just didn't think it was safe. Okay. And you've got the same thing up here, and it's safe up here, not having any issues. And we've been to several police departments who say the same thing as you.
Where have you been so
issues. Where was that? Wichita? Didn't we go to Wichita? We've gone to some in Missouri. We had about 10 stations in Missouri, and they say the same thing. But some of them do have signs, but they have permitless carry in Missouri too. Open
so you're
carry.
Just trying to advocate for your.
Yes.
You want to change your Oklahoma laws.
Yes.
And by doing this, you want to go to other states' departments.
Yeah.
To see if there's been any issues.
That's correct. Yep. With the policy that we want down there, we almost had it, and the governor vetoed it. So that's it, guys. Okay. That's what we're up here. All right. Thanks. Y'all have a good day.
Can I get your name?
Okay. That was a great clip from the News Now OKC broadcast that happened just before this broadcast. As you saw in that video, we had Tim Harper talking to police officers in Kansas regarding their policy and their law that respects constitutional carry for their citizens in Kansas. So the thought behind this, as we keep discussing this, is that Kansans can come to Oklahoma and constitutionally carry on their person without a permit. Oklahoma recognizes Kansas's law and says, yes, we're perfectly fine with that. Citizens of Kansas can freely carry their firearms on their person to defend themselves. However, Oklahomans cannot. And so we ask the question, are we wards, are we captives of our own government? And we have neighbors, we have citizens from neighboring states who retain their rights in our own state. They retain rights that we are not afforded by our government. Why have we allowed it to become this way, citizens of Oklahoma? And this is what's behind the Yellow Vest movement. For those of you who did not see the clip, we're going to show it again so that you can get familiar with this Yellow Vest movement that's happening in France, this movement that is calling out the French government for not respecting its citizens and their sovereignty.
The government says these were the most violent protests in Paris in over 50 years. On Saturday, 133 people were injured and more than 400 were arrested. The movement began 3 weeks ago on social media, with calls to protest attacks on fuel. But it's grown into a working-class revolt against the economic policies of President Emmanuel Macron. 27-year-old Jimmy Moreno came in from a nearby suburb. He works for the railways and voted for Macron.
C'est le peuple, tout bêtement, sans opinion politique. Nous sommes dans la rue tous par solidarité. La politique, notre politique, elle est corrompue.
The yellow vests that Jimmy and others are wearing have become a symbol. A law requires drivers to carry them, so they're easier to spot. Now, it's making their movements harder to ignore.
On retrouve une part d'humanité envers tout le monde. Tout le monde redevient humain. On est là pour une seule cause. Tout le monde met ses différends de côté.
Le peuple français.
Exactement. Nous sommes le peuple français, rien d'autre.
What's going on now? What are they chanting?
La démission de Macron, c'est ce qu'on souhaite. En premier, démission de Macron et changement de République pour être dans une vraie démocratie.
Démission Macron, démission Macron.
The taxes
Is your kitchen looking sad these days? Are you tired of looking at that old, dated bathroom? From rooftops to those unsightly holes in the walls, Complete Contracting has got you covered. Call 405-676-0595 today to schedule an estimate. Once again, that number is 405-676-0595. And remember, Complete Contracting has the contracting expertise for all your renovation and repair needs.
Hey everybody, Todd Tucker here, and everyone who knows me knows I love to read a great book, and right now I'm reading this incredible novel by local author Richard Engel. All you have to do is go to LastAmericanPresident.com and say big right now in this book. The Last American President is a story about political intrigue, romance, betrayal set against the backdrop of the dissolution of the United States of America. It's great reading, and when you go to lastamericanpresident.com, lastamericanpresident.com, use the promo code OTU, you're going to save money. And not only that, but half the price comes back to OTU. So half the proceeds from this book come back so you can watch great programming like you see on the OTU Media Network every day. LastAmericanPresident.com. I highly recommend this book. Read it today.
Introducing all new, safe, natural relief. A cannabinoid-rich, clarity and focus formula with 17 essential supplements. When it matters most, you've got a job to do. Anxiety isn't an option. Programmed to keep you moving. A product exclusively manufactured for Active Duty RX by Cantech Labs.
The government says these were the most violent protests in Paris in over 50 years. On Saturday, 133 people were injured and more than 400 were arrested. The movement began 3 weeks ago on social media, with calls to protest attacks on fuel. But it's grown into a working-class revolt against the economic policies of President Emmanuel Macron. 27-year-old Jimmy Moreno came in from a nearby suburb. He works for the railways and voted for Macron.
C'est le peuple, tout bêtement, sans opinion politique. Nous sommes dans la rue tous par solidarité. La politique, notre politique, elle est corrompue.
The yellow vests that Jimmy and others are wearing have become a symbol. A law requires drivers to carry them, so they're easier to spot. Now, it's making their movements harder to ignore.
On retrouve une part d'humanité envers tout le monde. Tout le monde redevient humain. On est là pour une seule cause. Tout le monde met ses différends de côté.
Le peuple français.
Exactement. Nous sommes le peuple français, rien d'autre.
What's going on now? What are they chanting?
La démission de Macron, c'est ce qu'on souhaite. En premier, démission de Macron et changement de République pour être dans une vraie démocratie.
The taxi.
All right, welcome back, everyone. If you are tuning in just now and you were able to watch the Vice coverage of the Yellow Vest movement in France, that's what we're talking about tonight, connecting dots on how France's government is violating the rights and sovereignty of their people, and in similar ways our state government here in Oklahoma is violating the rights of our citizens. We were talking about how Kansas recognizes their citizens' right to carry a firearm, and how Oklahoma recognizes that Kansas recognizes that and allows Kansas citizens to come into our state and carry their firearms without a permit. However, they require Oklahoma citizens, not respecting their right to carry a firearm, they require Oklahoma citizens to buy a permit from the state of Oklahoma after going through a class to prove that, to go through training so they can carry that firearm. And so we draw the connection tonight. The French government passed a law that required French citizens to have these yellow vests similar to what I'm wearing tonight. It required them to have them in their cars or face a fine. Here in Oklahoma, we have a gun license that is just as absurd, that the state of Oklahoma requires us to have but does not require other citizens of other states to have. Are we wards or are we free? Tonight, at this moment, I turn to our Declaration of Independence, where we see that Thomas Jefferson wrote these words that are often quoted. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men." Following that sentence, it says that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it. We have come to a point where we must recognize that our government has become destructive to the ends of our rights. Our right to defend ourselves and carry a firearm in defense of ourselves is an example of that. The flagrant violation of our representation by our legislature through House Bill 1010XX is another example of that. The flagrant violation of our right to petition our government through the Oklahoma Supreme Court in striking down the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite petition to give Oklahomans the ability to vote on whether or not they wanted the largest tax increase in Oklahoma. When the Supreme Court struck that down, they violated our right to petition our government. The right to self-defense is the right given to us by God. Self-preservation, the right to life. If life is not defended by a state, they will violate every other right that they feel free to. And guess what? They are free to violate every other right because you cannot defend yourself any longer. They've taken it away by making you buy it back from them. And again, we ask the question, why is our government wanting more of our taxes as they continue to reduce our rights? Citizens of Oklahoma, why are you putting up this? Join us after this break.
Don is awesome. OK2A is awesome, as you all know. He is great to work with at the state capitol. Yes, I am one of the senators that gets the opportunity to run the legislation, but it's great to have support from people like you to be able to advance those liberties and work to protect those liberties. So thank you all for coming out, to the media that came out here. Appreciate you all coming as well. I would like to ask a question, though, to the media and those that are here. What if you all had to actually go through a background check and pay a fee and go through all these hoops to exercise the freedom of the press that is guaranteed in the Constitution, like we all have to do to exercise our Second Amendment right? Or to the protesters across the street here at our rally with your First Amendment, we fully support your ability to exercise your First Amendment right. But what if you had to actually pay a fee, go through a background check, do all these things to exercise your First Amendment rights? Why is the one right that says shall not be infringed the one that is infringed upon the most? It's not right. Government should not be infringing upon our right. The proper function of government is outlined in the Declaration of Independence. It says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That is the core absolute function of government. It is to protect our rights.
All right, welcome back, guys. That clip was of Senator Nathan Dahm talking about our right to self-defense through the Second Amendment. He mentioned the same quote from the Declaration of Independence, where it said that government is instituted among men in order to secure those rights. Among those rights are the right to self-defense. We are also reminded of our Second Amendment, how it's written in our Constitution, that this particular right, it declares it there, it shall not be infringed. Now, the government shall not infringe any other right, but the reason why it shall not be infringed here is because when you lose your right to defend yourself, you lose your ability to defend all your other rights. And so he begs the question there, why is it that this particular right that states in plain English that everyone can read, still understandable from 1770 or 1786, right? 1789. And back when we got our Constitution together, why is it that this particular one that says shall not be infringed is the one that they go after the most, that they try to find ways to deny it? It's because without this one, we can't defend any of our other rights. We want to highlight OK2A, Oklahoma Second Amendment Association. They are friends of the OTU media, of Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. We want you to go to their Facebook page. It's Oklahoma Second Amendment. Search for that, OK2A. We also want you to support them through their legal defense fund. If you go to their GoFundMe page there on GoFundMe and search for OK2A Legal Defense Fund, you can support OK2A. They help continue the fight in defense of our Second Amendment here in the state of Oklahoma. So with saying that, we again have a situation in the state, if people are willing to recognize it and willing to do something about it, that our government does not respect our rights. And they look at us, as Rhonda Baker said, as distractions when we point out these points in our government, these instances in our government and our law that do not respect rights. As we've pointed out in the Canadian County letter, that by having property tax and the state confiscating property from us, we don't have property rights. By the state not allowing us the constitutional carry, we don't have the right to defend ourselves. With saying that, we're going to take another break with our sponsors, and we invite you guys to patronize them.
The Canadian County Republican Party says they weren't surprised to have pushback on a first draft letter to lawmakers, now tweaked and finalized before they return to session. In their words, it's a conversation that needs to be had.
When it violates life, liberty, or property, I have to stand up as an elected official in the party and say our government is getting it wrong.
Andrew Lopez, speaking as chairman of the Canadian County Republican Party, the group behind this letter addressing issues like abortion, property tax, and educational funding. Its original draft stating in part, quote, a better pathway would be to abolish public education, which is not a proper role of government. That exact language no longer in its final version.
We charge property tax to the citizens, and if you do not pay, you lose your property. That means we have zero property rights. It means we're renters in the state of Oklahoma. And that's why we need to eliminate the property tax. Not saying that public education will go away, but we need to find a proper way to fund it if it shall exist.
Ways, he says, like endowments and sponsorships. The group also suggesting legislation would require school districts to direct at least 65% of their annual spend to the classroom.
And really, you need to take that in context and look big picture across the nation. There aren't states that are spending 65% in the classroom.
Sean Heim with the Oklahoma State School Boards Association says that ask is not just vague, but it's been brought up in the past.
It didn't get any traction nationally or in Oklahoma because it's an arbitrary number with no real definition. You have local school boards looking at what they need, and the idea of spending, quote, 65% or 60% or a number in the classroom means what are you going to eliminate? Are you going to eliminate counselors, teacher assistants, assistant principals?
What we're pushing for is to challenge the idea that we just keep pouring money into education without getting down to the finer details and saying, okay, where is this money going? Why isn't education improving?
Moving forward, all parties involved are asking the hard questions.
How do we improve education in Oklahoma? How do we work with Governor Stitt on his goal to be top 10 in education, for our teachers to be #1 in the region?
At the state capitol, Lily Zhang, Oklahoma's News 4.
Well, joining me is Captain Chris Kennedy, one of Jawad's defense lawyers. Thank you so much for being here. So talk about Jawad's state of mind right now. Fill us in on all the details that the rest of us don't know, but you as an insider have, you know, the first eyes and ears too.
Right. Well, when Mohammed Jawad was taken back to Afghanistan, no one really knew when he was going to be there, how he was going to be taken back. We as his attorneys tried to get back to meet with him, and the government cut our funding to go back, so we're able to send one attorney back, Eric Montalvo, basically to help facilitate his arrival through private funds. Once we got there, we realized that really Mohammed Jawad had a lot of catching up to do. You know, he hadn't had a proper education. He'd been in prison for 7 years. He was sent back to his home, which is a country at war.
There were reports that he was suicidal, that his state of mind was completely off. Is that true?
Right, and there actually was one prior suicide attempt whenever he was in detention several years ago. So he couldn't handle really being around other people. He was not able to really function and carry on a good conversation without having issues. So, I mean, he's used to being in confinement.
So moving forward, I mean, he says that he's going to sue the American government. What does that even mean, especially in Jawad's case, and what exactly is he suing for?
Well, the issue with suing the government, obviously, is damages for what entailed when he was in confinement. There are several detainees, I think, that are looking into suing the United States government for whatever abuse and so on and so forth. I think the difference with Mohammed Jawad is you actually have a case where it was litigated and the facts came out in judicial orders that he was in fact tortured. And I think, obviously I won't be involved in the case being a member of the U.S. military, but I think that he has facts in his case which will really set him above and apart the other detainees.
Really quickly, so what is he hoping to get out of all of this if he is then successful?
Well, I think the deal with Mohammed Jawad is being able to live a successful life, whether it be through monetary damages or the ability to get an education, so on and so forth. He just wants to live a life just like the rest of us and be successful.
Thank you so much for being here and for your insight. This is a story that we will definitely be following here in Washington, D.C., but for now, I want to throw it back to you.
Thank you very much, Tina. That was Artis Dina Gosowski, joined by Captain Christopher Kennedy live.
We're going to head out. You guys have a safe day.
All right.
And we're not anti-cop. We're not anything like that. Oh, I was wanting to ask you a question. Both of you guys. This is we're from Oklahoma, and the governor vetoed permitless handgun carry in the state. Have you, as an officer, had any problems with permitless handgun carry? People carrying a handgun openly in public without a background check, without training? Do you have issues with that? Have you run into issues?
I mean, if you're a felon, you can't carry it.
Exactly.
And for certain other reasons, they can't carry. But me personally, no, I haven't ran into any issues. Usually, most people who can still carry usually are cooperative.
Yeah.
If we have to take a weapon from them and unload it while we're dealing with them, they're usually compliant with that. That's just for our safety and theirs. And I've pulled people over that have had handguns on them, and I said, just please keep your hand on the steering wheel.
Okay.
And they do. They comply. There's no issues.
Yeah, because they seem to want to paint the picture. Even our local highway patrol said if we allow people to run around without a permit, it's going to be blood in the streets. And it's not that way up here, is it?
I can't tell the future.
Yeah.
I think for the most part, people want to follow the law and they want to get along. And
I'd say the culture in Kansas is very similar to Oklahoma. So it's very much the same people, the same way they react to things. And most people that are going to be carrying their guns open are going to be law-abiding citizens. Wouldn't you say that's what you've encountered?
For what I've encountered, yes.
Okay, good. I appreciate it. Have you had any other? No, same? Okay. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate it. Because we're going to show this to the legislators down there. We're going to try to push for permitless carry again this year.
Well, I'm just one officer.
We've done this at every police department we've hit. I've got more than you. I've got quite a few saying we've had no issues with permitless handgun carry. And we're going to show them that. I left mine in the car because we went in the building. So, if I had mine right here, I'd still be legal.
All right.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Yeah, you guys too.
The government says these were the most violent protests in Paris in over 50 years. On Saturday, 133 people were injured and more than 400 were arrested. The movement began 3 weeks ago on social media, with calls to protest attacks on fuel. But it's grown into a working-class revolt against the economic policies of President Emmanuel Macron. 27-year-old Jimmy Moreno came in from a nearby suburb. He works for the railways and voted for Macron.
C'est le peuple, tout bêtement, sans opinion politique. Nous sommes dans la rue tous par solidarité. La politique, notre politique, elle est corrompue.
The yellow vests that Jimmy and others are wearing have become a symbol. A law requires drivers to carry them, so they're easier to spot. Now, it's making their movements harder to ignore.
On retrouve une part d'humanité envers tout le monde. Tout le monde redevient humain. On est là pour une seule cause. Tout le monde met ses différends de côté.
Le peuple français.
Exactement. Nous sommes le peuple français, rien d'autre.
What's going on now? What are they chanting?
La démission de Macron, c'est ce qu'on souhaite. En premier, démission de Macron et changement de République pour être dans une vraie démocratie.
The taxes.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Let the People Decide, live from the bunker here with OTU Media, Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. Join us on Facebook, on YouTube. Join the Bunker blog. Become a Patreon at patreon.com/OTU Media. Join the fight today. You saw the video again regarding the Yellow Vest movement in France and their protests against the carbon fuel tax that would tax them out of the use of their cars and prevent them from making a living for themselves. The globalism that France has allowed to come upon that nation. The EU open borders policy. They are calling for the resignation of Macron right now. These people of France want their government to respect their rights. And we want to state again that we do not endorse violence in protest of government. We encourage people to protest peacefully and to find ways to amend and alter their government so that it respects the rights and sovereignty of its people. But we do stand with the sentiment that government should respect the rights of its people. And that's why we are wearing these yellow vests today in solidarity with the French people, that their rights should be upheld and their sovereignty defended. We have been talking tonight about how our concealed carry permit is tantamount to the absurdity of the yellow vests in France. Our government is telling us that we must have a permit for a right that is given to us by God, the right to self-defense. And the French government tells their citizens, you must have this yellow vest in your car or we will fine you $150. We look at the absurdity and we point to it in our government that hair braiders are required to have a license in this state. Barbers are required to have a license in this state. If you are a used car salesman, you are required to have a license in this state. We are even required to have a license now if we would like to smoke marijuana. Honestly, the decision to smoke marijuana is a personal one. Whether using it for medicinal or recreational purposes, it's not the interest of the government to keep you from doing either. It's not the government's business to keep you from treating yourself with a natural occurring plant if you so choose. However, we saw that with the passage of State Question 788, that our government saw fit to frustrate and get in the way of the will of the people through our Oklahoma Medical Board. The Medical Board came through with rules that effectively would have nullified the will of the people in allowing them to use marijuana for medicinal purposes. One of the strongest requirements that came through in those policies that we saw was the requirement to have an on-staff pharmacist at these dispensaries that these fledgling dispensaries could not afford, which is a backdoor, stab in the back way to nullify the will of the people. So what have we covered tonight, my friends? We've covered the fact that our legislature does not respect our rights through our denial of representation through the passage of House Bill 1010XX in this past legislative session. The Supreme Court does not respect our right to petition our government by throwing out our petition to send House Bill 1010XX to a vote of the people on a ballot measure. Our government does not respect the will of the people when a ballot measure passes and it comes out with policies to nullify the will of the people. We have a government from the legislative branch, and not to forget Mary Fallin vetoing our constitutional carry bill from Senator Nathan Dahm when she promised to. So we have the main branches that everyone knows about, your legislative, executive, and judiciary, and then you have the fourth branch of government, the bureaucracy. None of them respect our rights or our wishes or our will. What is wrong with us, Oklahoma? And that's why we're speaking up. You're not going to hear this out of the normal media. The legislature, Rhonda Baker's calling us a distraction. How dare she? We are calling for government to come to its proper institution. The end of government is to defend and uphold our rights, our life, liberty, our property, the pursuit of happiness. But we see again and again, it frustrates our desires and our efforts to take care of ourselves in respect to commerce through all these licenses. And there's more that we could name off, but remember, hair braiders are licensed in this state. A person has to be licensed to pour a drink of alcohol for someone. With that, we're going to take a break. Please join us to visit our sponsors.
The government says these were the most violent protests in Paris in over 50 years. On Saturday, 133 people were injured and more than 400 were arrested. The movement began 3 weeks ago on social media, with calls to protest a tax on fuel. But it's grown into a working-class revolt against the economic policies of President Emmanuel Macron. 27-year-old Jimmy Moreno came in from a nearby suburb. He works for the railways and voted for Macron.
C'est le peuple, tout bêtement, sans opinion politique. Nous sommes dans la rue tous par solidarité. La politique, notre politique, elle est corrompue.
The yellow vests that Jimmy and others are wearing have become a symbol. A law requires drivers to carry them, so they're easier to spot. Now, it's making their movements harder to ignore.
On retrouve une part d'humanité envers tout le monde. Tout le monde redevient humain. On est là pour une seule cause. Tout le monde met ses différends de côté.
Le peuple français.
Exactement. Nous sommes le peuple français, rien d'autre.
What's going on now? What are they chanting?
La démission de Macron, c'est ce qu'on souhaite. En premier, démission de Macron et changement de République pour être dans une vraie démocratie.
Démission Macron, démission.
Welcome back, everyone. This is live from the bunker. Let the people decide. I am Andrew Lopez, the chairman of the Canadian County Republican Party. We have been covering the French Yellow Vest movement tonight and how there are connections between their sentiments and the situation here in Oklahoma. Here closing tonight, I want to review the platform of Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. It's called the Oklahoma Taxpayer Platform. It's hanging up here on our wall. And so we're going to run through and review the foundational beliefs of the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite organization. So it starts with number one. We are calling for fiscal responsibility. And we demand state and local government that is fiscally responsible, transparent, and accountable. We are calling for limited government. Most Oklahomans agree that state and local government should focus on 4 basic areas: public safety, transportation and infrastructure, education, and a safety net for the most vulnerable. The first instinct of elected officials should be to limit government's reach. Number 3, there should be structural reform. We want structural reform to transform and eliminate governmental dysfunction, duplication, and corruption. Remember, the purpose of our government has become corrupt because it is not defending our rights and respecting its citizens' property. Number 4, we call for fair taxation. Tax people in the least burdensome way. Income taxes impose a discouraging penalty on work, productivity, personal responsibility, savings, investment, capital formation, and entrepreneurial risk-taking. We have number 5, free market environment. Preserve the gains made by Oklahoma in the past 20 years towards a greater worker freedom and less adversarial legal climate. Number 6, criminal justice system reform. We need criminal justice reform that keeps citizens safe but doesn't lock people up unnecessarily. Number 7, state sovereignty. Provide a barrier between Oklahomans and federal overreach that limits our constitutional liberties. We cannot continue to let the federal government impose restrictions, mandates, and costs that infringe on our rights. And we also say that to Oklahoma. We appreciate you guys watching tonight. We again invite you to join us on Facebook and become a member to the Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite page. Please get with us on YouTube and search for Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite or OTU Media. Please subscribe there and enable notifications to know when we put a video online. Go to the Bunker blog spot. Please join us on Patreon and become a supporter. You can go to patreon.com/OTU Media to join us there. And we appreciate David Van Rissingham with Sooner Politics for helping us get the word out also. With that, we conclude our broadcast tonight, and please share this video, guys. Thank you for joining us.